Hello, how are you? Are you guys good? Did you do the homework? Please email it to me, ne? Okay, I'm starting now. Good day, everybody. Welcome to Life Sciences Grade 11. My name is So, guys, in today's lesson, we are doing the corrections, homework corrections for the topic of gaseous exchange. Regarding the topics we covered this week, yesterday, question one. So it is what? It is nicotine, guys. Thank you so much for your answers. Thank you so much. I like that today you're participating. So that product that we find in tobacco is nicotine. It is poisonous and it is also addictive to you. The next question here deals with passive smoking. Explain what passive smoking is and who is most at risk. We discussed that involuntary passive smoking is involuntary smoking exposure, whereby you're exposed to smoke that you really didn't plan for, you didn't ask for it really. You are in a place where people are smoking, so you're exposed to that smoke. So that is passive smoking, and it is detrimental to the health of adults and children. And according to recent studies, children run a higher risk of developing lung problems. Let me start afresh the screen sharing, guys. I'm sorry. I think it's my connection. I'm starting afresh the screen sharing. I think that's the problem here. I'm gonna exit and start afresh. Please allow me to share. Hi, please allow me to share. Okay, guys, I'm sorry about this, the problem in the sound. I'm here now. We're continuing with that question. Please forgive me for that disturbance there. We will continue. I hope you can hear me now clearly. Can you tell me if you can hear me clearly or not? I'll continue from that slide on talking about passive. We've discussed passive smoking, right? Yes, it's involuntary smoking exposure. And then question 3, why do people start smoking? Let us discuss the reasons why people start smoking. Do you know why people start smoking? Oh, thank you. Bushlet did her homework. I can see from the answers there. Okay, passive smoking, inhaling smoke because of proximity to a smoker, particularly harmful to babies and children whose parents smoke in the house. Yes, that's true, Bushle. And then what is now? Why do people start smoking? There are various reasons why people start smoking. Most people start to smoke because of stress. Peer pressure also contributes to the habit being taken up by teenagers. Advertising also plays a role. So those 3 play a role in the people smoking. Let's see what you are saying in the chat. I'm struggling to open the chats. I can't open the chats. Okay, nicotine speeds up a person's reaction. Smoking makes them get a pleasurable feeling lifelong. Okay, yes. So why? Because of that, I think you're answering especially to that point whereby because of stress, it makes them feel good, because then the nicotine does that in the body. Then someone ends up feeling so good that they feel good. They feel good, so they easily get addicted to the stuff. And that is why. And then peer pressure. Some people, while they are young, they feel the peer pressure, and then they do what? They see other people who smoke, their peers. Most people who start smoking, they feel the pressure, and then they start smoking as well. And it starts usually when they are young, when they are still teenagers. It happens a lot, and then they start the smoking. I don't know why it happens a lot with teenagers. I don't know why teenagers often get sucked into this, but it happens. Probably the things that the TV shows or whatever they watch, it contributes to that. Then advertising. Advertising also plays a role in that. Advertising plays a role in smoking. People watch a lot of these things, then they get that they I don't know, it's attractive. I think when they see it being advertised, they get attracted to it, and then they want to do it. And that is why advertising is illegal. It's not, it's under law. You are not allowed to advertise tobacco products. And then question 4, define the term artificial respiration. Okay, I see someone wants to talk to me here. Artificial respiration is a technique, a way to make air flow in and out of a person's lungs if natural breathing is weak or stops. Yeah, Butlet did her homework. Thank you. So yeah, like Butlet said, you make air. It's a technique to make air flow in and out of a person's lungs. So this is artificial. You can do it by mechanical means as well. Ne? You force air into a person who is suffering and can't breathe by themselves. So you help them out through artificial. So it can happen by means of another person or by mechanical means where you are put into machine. And then the next question is, when natural breathing is weak or stops, mouth-to-mouth resuscitation is used. What is the procedure for mouth-to-mouth? Let us discuss the procedure for mouth-to-mouth. This year we started discussing it. The rescuer, what does the rescuer do? The rescuer would push the victim's chin up and tilt the head back to prevent the tongue from blocking the throat. The rescuer will then place mouth over the victim's mouth and blow hard several times. And then if the victim does not respond, position of head is checked and process is repeated for several minutes. For an adult victim, air is blown 12 times a minute. For a small child, the rescuer places their mouth covering the mouth and nose and blows more gently and often. And then another method there is to blow into the victim's nose with the mouth shut. First aid kits have plastic shields with valves to keep a rescuer safe from HIV infection. So with this one, you need to be protecting each other. You are protecting each other from any sort of infection in case it is the rescuer who actually has the infection, or if it's the victim who has the infection. It helps to keep both parties safe and protected. And then, are you still good so far? Are you okay? You okay, guys? Talk to me. Are you okay? Okay, I think you're okay. So, let's continue. And then, this here is on activity 7, again, still on the Via Africa grade 11 book. What can, activity 7, Mr. Activity 7, what can data show about altitude and performance? Study the graph below, which gives the results from an investigation into the relationship between atmospheric pressure and altitude. Remember I said that we discussed atmospheric pressure versus altitude, and we explained especially how it affects maybe athletes and how they practice and what they should take into consideration. So this graph here shows us on the y-axis the pressure, which is calculated in millibars, and then on the x-axis it's the altitude calculated in meters. And then you'll notice that the higher the pressure, the lower the altitude. As you can see, the larger the altitude, you see. With the high pressure, there is low altitude over here. Then here, there is low pressure, but there is high altitude, as you can see. So they work inversely proportional to each other. Now, answering this question here. Graph illustrating the relationship between atmospheric pressure and altitude. So that's the graph I showed you. Provide an appropriate hypothesis for the investigation. So we need to provide a hypothesis. So because we are comparing pressure, atmospheric pressure and altitude, and we've noted, remember I noted that when atmospheric pressure is high, altitude is low, but when altitude increases, then the pressure decreases. So we'll do it like this. This is the hypothesis. This is a statement that you want to test. Actually, that was actually tested when they came up with these results that we see in the graph. So there it goes. Atmospheric pressure decreases as altitude increases. We've seen that from the graph. We've observed it from the graph. Probably that was the hypothesis that was carried out that enables them to give us this table or this graph with the results. And then question 2, identify A, the dependent variable, and B, the independent variable. You will remember, guys, the dependent variable is the one that is on the y-axis, which is the atmospheric pressure. And the independent variable is the one that you will always find on the x-axis. So atmospheric pressure is dependent on the altitude. Always, not the other way around. Altitude remains altitude, but what changes is the atmospheric pressure. At higher altitude, the pressure is different as compared to when there is lower altitude. So that is what you know. So when you get the question like this, you look at your x-axis, that would be your independent variable. Your y-axis, that is your dependent variable. That's what we noticed when you look at the altitude. As the altitude increases, the atmospheric pressure decreases. So note that. Always, always key. Let me write it for you so you don't forget. Atmospheric pressure, the independent variable is the y-axis, the independent one. And the dependent variable, no man, my bad, the dependent variable is on the y-axis. And the independent one is on the x-axis. Excuse me for that mistake. X-axis is always the independent. Y-axis is the dependent variable. Always, always, always remember that. Let's show the graph. You draw it like this. This is your graph. This here would be your x-axis, and then this here would be your y-axis. So everything that is here on the vertical plane, it is the dependent variable. Everything that is on the horizontal plane is the independent variable. In this case, the independent is the altitude and the dependent variable is the atmospheric pressure. If you keep that, as I taught you, you will definitely get full marks for questions like this. And these are the types of questions you can actually get in your exams and your tests. And I hope you've seen that we are, on a side note, I hope you've seen that we are starting with assessments very soon. So please pay attention. Every hint I give you, it will be tested. It's something that is most likely to be asked even in national papers. So I don't just say it for the sake of saying it. Check, like really take note of the things, of the advice we give you, because we really, really want you to pass. And then question 3, explain the term atmospheric pressure. Atmospheric pressure is the downward pressure exerted by the weight of the overlying atmosphere. So that's how you define it. For 2 marks, this is the pressure, it's downward. You understand? It's downward pressure exerted by the weight of the overlying atmosphere. And then question 4, explain the relationship between atmospheric pressure and altitude. This is closely linked to our hypothesis, remember? So what is the relationship? As atmospheric pressure decreases, the altitude increases. Or you can say, as altitude increases, atmospheric pressure decreases. That's as long as it shows the relationship that when this happens on the one variable, the other action happens on the other variable. Put it like that. And then for 2 marks, you'd get your answer. So either way, like I mentioned, you can say as the atmospheric pressure decreases, the altitude increases, or you can say as the altitude increases, the atmospheric pressure decreases. And then question 5. How would the shape of the graph differ should the dependent variable be replaced with number of red blood corpuscles? Explain the relationship between altitude and red blood corpuscles. Remember we discussed this yesterday where we explained this. Let's go look at our answer here. As altitude increases, the quantity of red blood cells also increases. More red blood cells are needed to provide enough oxygen, as there is less oxygen at higher altitudes because the air is less dense. So as you move higher up with the altitude, as the altitude increases, the pressure, remember, would decrease, meaning at the higher altitudes, there is less oxygen available. At the higher altitudes, there is less oxygen available. So because your body is trying to preserve you, what does it do? It will ensure that it produces enough, it releases enough red blood cells. Why? Because red blood cells are carriers of oxygen. So if there's enough production of red blood cells, it means they can be able to carry lots and lots more oxygen to aid for the deficiency of oxygen at the higher altitude. Because there, the air is less dense, meaning there's less oxygen over there. So that is the relationship there. That's how the red blood cells go along with the altitude. So that's, you need to understand that, right? And what do they say here? They say how would, okay, it's question 5. How would the shape of the graph differ should the dependent variable, the dependent variable is what? Dependent variable is the pressure. So here, if on the y-axis now, you are putting red blood cells, let me write red blood cells, and then your independent would still be your altitude, right? This here, you still have altitude, and over there you have red blood cells. Now we are replacing the dependent. Remember, we are replacing the dependent variable. So what happens? As the altitude would increase, the red blood cells will also increase. So your graph will have a different shape now. It will probably go like this to show that it's increasing. Because when they're low, they increase together. As you move high up, it's increasing. And as you move further to the right, it is increasing. So as altitude increases, even the red blood cells would increase. So the shape of your graph will be like this. That's how the shape will differ. Then here, you would also need to explain, like I just explained, it's 2 parts. You first explain the shape. That's why I'm explaining here and I'm showing you what would happen. The shape would curve upwards. It would curve upwards at an increasing rate. The graph would show that it is increasing at an increasing rate because altitude is increasing, even the red blood cells are increasing. And then you'd explain this concept here where you explain the relationship between altitude and red blood cells. And then you'd have your 3 marks. Imagine that. That's great. And then question 6, use the graph to predict the possible atmospheric pressure for people living in Johannesburg. So here you need to compare probably the altitudes in Durban, Johannesburg, and Cape Town to be able to work out exactly what the atmospheric pressure could be. So we'll need to note and take note and check, search on the internet the altitudes in those areas. Then you'd find that the pressure would most likely be around 1,000 millibars in Devon, Same with Johannesburg, there'll be about 1000 millibars in Johannesburg. I'll explain this on a later, I think on Friday. I want to explain all these, exactly how it works and why Durban and Joburg would have probably approximately the same atmospheric pressure. And then Cape Town would be about less than 200 millibars. Then question 7. High altitudes produce two contradictory effects on the performance of athletes. Explain the statement briefly. You can notice it's for 4 marks. There is an increase in the number of red blood cells at higher altitudes. Remember? That's first part A. There's an increase in number of red blood cells when they are high altitude. Therefore, more oxygen is then available for the body of the athletes, because when there's an increase in the number of red blood cells, then the supply of oxygen in the body increases. But why was there an increase? Because there was an increase in the altitude. Yes. Hence, the performance of athletes who train at high altitude, those ones here who are aided with more red blood cells and therefore more oxygen. And then when they train at high altitude, then they participate at sea level, will be improved due to increased oxygen. Remember? So you train at high altitude, you're training at high altitude, because at high altitude, the air is less dense, meaning there's less oxygen in the air. That's why the body would produce more red blood cells, so that there's more oxygen transported quickly in your body. So if you train at such conditions, then you go participate at sea level where the pressure is low, and with sea level the pressure is high, right? Yes, the sea level pressure is, they work inversely to each other. High altitudes, low pressure, but at sea level, high pressure. Then there's now in the air, there's more oxygen in the air. So you will be improved, your performance will be improved because of the increased oxygen in the environment. So you are just now, you train under very harsh conditions, and you can be able to function properly under such conditions now. The normal one, the sea level conditions. So briefly sum it up around those parts, you'll be able to get your 4 marks. Then next question. Question 8. Draw a table to represent the data in the graph. So we have a okay, so now we are moving to question 8, whereby we are doing the table, right? The table, tabulating the information on the graph over here. So you would need to label it accordingly. Your table, remember we are looking at the information here, the independent variable, which is the altitude, would be the one you write over here, and the dependent one, the atmospheric pressure, you write it there. So you get a mark firstly for the caption, which is table of atmospheric pressure and altitude. Then you get a mark again for labeling the columns correctly. On the left side column is altitude in meters, and then on the other one it's atmospheric pressure in millibars. You also get a mark for the units for both columns. So you get a mark for indicating the meters. You get a mark for indicating the millibars. Then now we compare the readings here. Let's check. This is extracted from the Via Africa textbook now. So let's see. Here we've got, let's start at 0. At 0 altitude, when you at 0 altitude, down here, the 0 would obviously be around here. You move up, it is with the 1000 millibars. So that part is correct. You can clearly see that. Then let's suppose we are moving to 5000. The altitude where it's 5000 over there. When we move up, what do we notice? It is at about 700, right? So it can be correct that this is 550. It is about 700 millibars, because look, this is from 5000. This is about 700 over here. Let's go to the 10,000 one. When you look at the 10,000, it's about here at the center. When we move from 10,000, we go to about 400 millibars. 400 millibars. Then you look at the 15,000 over here. 15,000 meters, you get about 200 millibars. 200. Then you move to 20,000. At about 20,000 meters, we are there at about 150 instead. Or 100, yeah, it's half of that. It's 100. So this 100 is correct here. It's about 100 millibars. Then at 25,000, there it's about 50. So that is also correct. It's about 50. And then at 30,000 meters, it's back down to 0 there. It is 0. So I hope this is clear. I'm not sure why these figures are like this over here. I will need to research that and find out, eh? I'll check in with the textbook. But anyway, we did it together. As you can see, you're most welcome to do it on your own as well and see if maybe you'll disagree with me. But I'm pretty sure this is the 5,000 here. And as we can clearly see, it's about 700. The 10,000 is here, it's about 400 millibars. 15,000, about 200. So you're most welcome to go through it. Send me any queries if you might have, and let's work it out together. So that's it from me today. Tomorrow onwards, I will get us to just do a quick sum up of this, the sum of this work, and then we can finish with this topic before Friday. We'll definitely finish with the topic tomorrow, and we'll move on to the other topics. Any questions, guys? Do you have any questions? Okay, if there are no questions, then I guess I will see you tomorrow, where we continue. Tomorrow we're wrapping up the topic. So we'll do the quick summary that I'm showing you here, and then we'll also do a classwork together. I'm doing this so that it can help you. Remember, guys, they mentioned that I don't know if you received the newsletters. If you didn't, please sign up for the newsletter, because we'll be starting with assessments from next week, but the grade 10s to 12s will start the week after. So please be ready for that, be prepared for that. But like I'm saying, I'm preparing you for all that work. So if you have any questions to get you ready for that work, and it will cover grade, it will cover term 1 and term 2's work especially. So feel free, like I said, if you want to ask me anything, send me an email. I will always respond to you guys. Ne? Thank you so much for your participation. Khalalel, I don't think you have my email address. So let me send, there's my email address there. At Gmail, I've sent it to you. digupega2204@gmail.com. If you have any questions or queries, you are most welcome at all times to send me an email, and we'll work it out together. Thank you so much for your participation today. I will see you tomorrow. Bye.